This is a carbide miner's lamp. This is where you would store your fuel that would attach to your belt. And this is what the miners at the Wettlaufer Hill 64 option, which is part of Jack Williams' mining claims. Now, the story goes like this. Jack Williams is a guy that is a prospector, and he stakes a mining claim in the Silver Center, and it's beside, it's in a great location. It's part of where all the other mines are under development, and he options it to the Wettlaufer mine. And in 1912, the Wettlaufer mine was the neighboring mine, and it was one of the very productive mines in Silver Center's history. And it actually was running out of ore reserves at that time. So in 1912, they optioned Jack Williams' mining claim R.L. 458 on the old claim maps. And what Jack Williams did was he optioned it. Wettlaufer later dropped it. They dug a shaft. They didn't diamond drill back then. They dug an exploratory shaft on a good showing, and things didn't work out for a few reasons, which we're gonna find out. And
welcome to The Explainer. Today we're taking a bit of a theatrical journey into the doomed history of Claim R.L. 458, and we're doing it through a series of recently unearthed letters. We're looking at a fascinating collection of corporate correspondence from 1912 and 1913. Now, these letters were sent from a very comfortable office at 42 Broadway in New York City, all the way out to the freezing, unforgiving wilderness of South Lorrain, Ontario. And as you'll see, they document a brutal, completely heartbreaking struggle against the earth itself. Just listen to this dispatch from January 9, 1913. The building enclosing the machinery has been sheathed and a covering put over the mouth of the shaft. Due to the heavy inflow of water our pumps have been unable to handle, sinking has been at a standstill, no other pumps being available. I mean, imagine being out there in the dead of the freezing Canadian winter, right? You're staring down a flooded shaft, the water's rising, and you know your livelihood depends entirely on digging deeper. Well, that was the harsh reality for the men working under the Wettlaufer Lorrain Silver Mines.
And Wettlaufer Lorrain Silver Mines Limited, they weren't some small-time operation either. They had an authorized capital of $1,500,000. For that era, that's a massive sum. The men back in New York, the secretaries and treasurers signing off on these letters, they were bound by incredibly strict option agreements. They literally needed to certify that an average of at least 100 shifts of labor per month were being performed on the property just to keep their claim alive. So the pressure from the top was immense. But the rock beneath them kind of had its own plans.
Moving into Section 1, the claim at South Lorrain. To really grasp why this endeavor was so grueling, we absolutely have to understand the physical geography of where they were.
The precise boundaries of Claim R.L. 458 sit right near the Montrose Prospect and the Keeley Claim in South Lorraine. This area was notoriously tough. We're talking rugged terrain defined by difficult topographical features, awful marshes, and incredibly dense forests. The miners weren't just fighting the rock below ground. They were actively fighting the environment itself above ground, totally isolated from major infrastructure and completely at the mercy of the elements.
Let's look at Section 2, Breaking Ground, Winter 1912. The early reports sent back to New York detail a scene of sheer, brute force effort, but honestly, very little reward. In a letter dated November 8, 1912, the Secretary-Treasurer actually certifies the October work, reporting 131.5 shifts of labor just for test pitting, and they only sunk 21 feet. The letter just bluntly states, at a depth of 8 feet this vein dipped out of the shaft. No ore has as yet been encountered. So they push into November, logging almost 146 shifts, but as the December 11th letter notes, zero actual development work was done. Instead, they were basically preparing for a war, moving this massive boiler and hoist from the Montrose property, erecting a headframe, and building a structure just to enclose their machinery against the incoming winter. And still, the refrain remains exactly the same. No ore has as yet been encountered.
Which brings us to Section 3, the flooded shafts. Because as winter really set in, the miners' true enemy finally emerged. And it wasn't just the freezing temperatures above ground, it was a relentless rising tide below.
The data here proves an agonizingly slow rate of progress. Just look at December 1912, only 41.25 shifts. A complete standstill because of water their pumps just couldn't handle. They tried to fight back in January 1913, pushing over 156 shifts, but they only managed a pitiful 9 feet of sinking. Then comes February. They poured absolutely everything they had into it, nearly 268 shifts of backbreaking labor in the dead of a Canadian winter, and their reward? A mere 24 feet. The ratio of human energy expended to ground conquered is just absolutely staggering.
A letter from March 6, 1913 captures this misery perfectly. The shaft has been timbered down to a depth of 40 feet. The rock has been very fissured and progress has naturally been hampered due to the great amount of water we have had to handle. You see, they were dealing with a diabase formation, which is this notoriously hard volcanic rock, but it was fractured just enough to let the groundwater pour in endlessly. They were essentially trying to dig a hole in a rock-hard sponge while it was completely submerged in water.
Okay, on to Section 4, Chasing the Calcite Vein. Mining, at its core, is a game of hope. And just when the physical tolls seemed totally insurmountable, the rock offered them a tantalizing promise.
Hidden within that exact same March 6th letter, complaining about the water, there's suddenly a beacon of light. The secretary writes, "The formation is diabase full of calcite stringers, an assay one of which gave 28 ounces silver." 28 ounces. In the world of silver mining, a strike like that is the ultimate adrenaline shot. It's exactly the reason you keep pumping the water. It's the reason you keep working those crazy 268 shift months. It meant the silver was actually there. They just had to reach it.
And that momentum, it carried them right into spring. By the May 8th letter, which reports on April's work, the tone is practically buzzing with optimism. They drove 36 feet of drifting and 19 feet of crosscutting over 276 shifts. The letter triumphantly declares, during the early part of the month, some thin leaf silver was found in the drift. Even better, they constructed a brand new airline connected directly to the main Wettlaufer compressor plant. This gave them vastly more power than their old steam setup. The corporate office noted that this naturally will increase the monthly advances. They were powered up, they finally had silver in sight, and they were ready to conquer this claim for good.
Section 5. The swamp yields nothing. Nature, as it so often does in these historical accounts, gets the final say. We enter the final act, where the miners, fueled by the power of that new airline and the promise of leaf silver, drift their tunnel directly underneath a local swamp.
This timeline reveals a rapid, truly heartbreaking fall from those tantalizing hints of silver straight into absolute, crushing failure. In February, they get the thrilling 28-ounce assay. In April, the discovery of thin leaf silver and that high-power airline installation. By May, they push the drift 76 feet, relentlessly following the vein east-west, which leads them straight beneath the heavy, waterlogged footprint of a swamp above. And then, the devastating climax hits in June.
The June 9, 1913 letter from Secretary-Treasurer A. Westlake reads like a death knell. Despite logging an enormous 296.25 shifts of labor in May, pushing 83 feet of new tunnel, the verdict is absolute. The ground in the drift underneath the swamp has disclosed nothing. The rock is very fissured. Now that fissured rock meant the swamp water was likely pouring down on them in buckets, making the work miserable and incredibly dangerous, all for a vein that had suddenly, inexplicably, vanished into barren stone. The 20 ounces? It was a ghost. The leaf silver was just a tease. The claim was empty.
Which brings us to Section 6, the final surrender. After nearly a year of moving heavy machinery, battling flooded shafts, installing airlines, and logging well over 1,000 shifts of backbreaking labor, the corporate machinery back in New York City moved with ruthless efficiency.
The final letter is dated July 1st, 1913. It is incredibly brief and totally devoid of any emotion. Addressed to J. Williams in Haileybury, it simply states, "On behalf of the Wettlaufer Lorrain Silver Mines Limited, I beg to advise you that said company has determined not to perform any further development work upon the property, and is prepared forthwith to surrender the mining claim to such person as may be designated by yourself." And just like that, the pumps were shut off, the hoist was silenced, claim R.L. 458 was officially abandoned to the dark, the cold, and the rising water, leaving a literal fortune in human sweat buried forever beneath the South Lorrain soil.
Well, that brings us to the end of this incredibly fascinating and ultimately tragic explainer. It really makes you wonder, What other forgotten secrets, shattered dreams, and corporate ghost stories lie buried in the archives?